so much, Erik, for joining. Always a pleasure to chat and learn from you. So thank you for taking time out to share your thoughts.
Well, thanks, Ned.
Wonderful.
Good to talk to you.
Wonderful, Erik. So, Erik, I know you've had a very strong and rich background when it comes to customer experiences and making a positive impact in that domain. For those that might be watching that don't know about you, can you talk a little bit about your background, especially in context of your work related to customer journeys and customer experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started, my career primarily was in professional services, working for hardware vendors and technology providers. So I've always spent probably 20 plus years now in professional services. And within the last few years, as HPE has made the pivot from being just a transaction product company to really now becoming a services and as a service company, I've taken on a role where I'm really focused on defining and building the experience around that as a service. So for the last few years, I've been heads down focused on our own internal transformation. So instead of helping other companies transform and clients transform, I'm now inwardly focusing and helping HPE make this transformation. So I've really been focused exclusively on thinking differently about who our customers are, what's that journey that they are on, how do we meet them where they are as they're transforming and as we're transforming. So as we think about now becoming an as-a-service player, what do we need to do differently? How do we need to think differently? This is not about speeds and feeds and selling products at discounts anymore. This is really about an experience and an outcome, and we have to get it right. The competition in the tech industry, as everybody knows, is getting tougher and tougher with cloud and SaaS solutions. So for us to be and stay competitive, we've really got to get it right. And that's really what my focus has been over the last few years.
Wonderful. And, for those that don't know, I know you're very hands-on with not only doing the actual work, but also in terms of creating your own infomercials. And I think you know what I'm referring to, but for all those that have not seen it, if they browse through on LinkedIn, then they'll see an infomercial that I believe, Erik, you shot yourself or with a very small team. And I think it was shot just using regular smartphones or cameras, but it looked like it had $1 million budget. And it didn't.
Yeah, it was a little bit more than smartphones, but it was during the height of the pandemic. We had to switch our what we usually would have a Discover event in Las Vegas, like most tech companies in June, and we had to go virtual. Right. And this is one of those times when I really thought about the experience. And up until the event, I was hearing from my customers who had been attending other companies' virtual events. And they were talking about how boring they were, how dull they were, and just another Zoom meeting. And we started to have Zoom fatigue. So I started to think, well, for my presentation for Discover, what can I do differently? How can I make it more interesting and more engaging than just another recorded Zoom session with a generic background like everybody else had? So fortunately, I live about an hour and a half away from the Bonneville Salt Flats. I thought it might be interesting to get out there and film it out there, have a natural background, make it look a little more interesting, and try to weave in a little of the history of the Bonneville Salt Flats with my presentation. It worked out really well, and I appreciate you calling that out.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that differentiates a master customer experience specialist versus others, where the emphasis that was put in that infomercial, I mean, it was very pleasant to watch. And at the same time, after I spoke with you, that's something I shared internally with our marketing team as well. And I was like, we got to do something like that. So we're working on it, but that was a good idea over there. So Erik, in your background, given the responsibilities and the challenges you face on a daily basis, especially, in this very cutting edge niche line that you're in, can you talk a little bit about when your CEO turns to you and says, hey, great job, what are they typically referring to? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a tough one. As we think about experience, especially as a product company making this transformation,
Right.
what a good job looks like is when Antonio, our CEO, is hearing from customers, and he hears from a lot of them, very very engaged one-on-one with a lot of our customers. When he hears from them that the experience is so much better, that we're easier to work with, that it's faster, and that we're really highlighting the value. And those are the three key pillars that we are really focused on. It's all about speed. We have to be faster than we have been in the past, and not just just shipping products or getting it to them, but really thinking about that end-to-end life cycle, how customers learn about our solutions, how they make buying decisions, getting them all the information they need very quickly and the right information at the right time so they can move through that purchase journey, and then get it implemented, stood up, and really delivering value for them. So when customers say it's faster time to value, that's a sign of goodness for us that we're doing something right. The other is the effort side of it. We've got to make it easier. Some of the data we saw early on from our customers was, hey, we're a tough company to do business with. We're a big enterprise. We have multiple BUs, multiple touch points to the customer. And some of the feedback we were getting was, hey, you could be easier to work with. So low effort is one of the key pillars of our new customer experiences. We know we have to make things easier for our customers. So when customers say that was easy, that was intuitive, it was easy for me to get through the process, that's another sign that we're doing something right. And then the third piece of that, our third pillar, is really around the differentiated value. We're in a similar space, competing similarly with the big cloud providers, Amazons and Azures, but we're not Amazon, we're not Azure. And we have unique capabilities that they don't have. And we really have to emphasize that unique differentiation. And I always say we have to do what we do and do it so well our customers come back and bring a friend. And actually, I stole that quote from Walt Disney from the 50s. But that's really what we're doing, is what do we do so well? And how do we make sure we're differentiated from our competitors? And that's another key pillar. So I think when Antonio, back to your original question, when Antonio says, hey, we're doing a good job, what that means is he's hearing from the customers that things are faster time to value, that we've reduced the effort, made it easy and intuitive for our customers to get what they need from us. And most importantly, that we really are delivering a value, a differentiated value that our competitors can't do. And again, focusing on what we do really well, which is the physical infrastructure on-prem, in the data center, at the enterprise scale. That's what we do really well, and being able to bring that to customers.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know you and I have had conversations, and we've talked about the different things that are that you've done when it comes to evaluating these customer journeys and their pain points and these moments of truth. Journey mapping is also a tool that I know that you're well versed with. In your work, what is it that attracted you towards customer journey mapping versus other tools that are out there?
Yeah, and this is one I could talk for hours on, because there's so many. What we have found, there have been so many benefits to really focusing on the customer journey. We started very, very high level when we started to think about the customer journey, and it was really around awareness, conversion, purchase, initiate, operate, and grow, renew. So we had 6 stages of the journey, very, very high level. And then we mapped it against personas, because one of the big shifts we made was in the transaction world. In our old traditional business, we knew who our buyer was. It was the data center operator, data center owner, the infrastructure buyer, procurement. This is where our relationships were. This is where we operated for 30 or 40 years. Now, when we moved to as a service, we recognized that the personas we had to work with were very different. Now we're talking to developers, we're talking to data scientists, we're talking to CISOs, we're talking to CXOs, finance. So different personas. So we had to understand across those 6 kind of generic journey stages by persona, what was happening at each stage. So for example, our traditional marketing, when we think about awareness, We were very good at getting the message out to those data center buyers and traditional marketing, magazine ads and LinkedIn ads and that sort of thing.
Right.
But when we started to talk to developers and started to talk to data scientists, they want communities. They want to hear about your stuff through communities, and even Reddit and those types of things pop up. That's where they want to be exposed. That's where they want to hear about it. They don't want marketing. And they said they won't even read it. So we had to learn very quickly that there were multiple channels. We had to be seamlessly omni-channel, and we had to target the right channels across those journey stages by persona. And that was a kind of a big eye opener for us. And that's where the journey map really came into play for us, was understanding, hey, each step we have to think differently. The conversion process, how you make buying decisions. Again, in the transaction world, it was about discounting. It was about speeds and feeds. In the as a service world, now you have to convince a developer you're giving them the services they need to do their job and be effective. So it's a different message, a different material, different collateral, different way to do it. And we really focused on approaching it with four I hate to say pillars again, but really four approaches. One was making everything digital. So we launched GreenLake Experience. We made everything digital because we knew across those personas, we had to do that. Everything has to be on demand, especially as we looked at personas like developers and data scientists, where they want it on their terms when they want it. They don't want to wait for a seller to come out with a PowerPoint and give them a presentation. They want to be able to get that information when they want it. It has to be seamlessly omni-channel. So each stage of the journey, we have to provide it in multiple channels, because it's not just about a browser anymore. It's not just about a PowerPoint deck. It's on the phone, it's mobile, it's communities, it's tweets, it's everything. And you have to be seamlessly omni-channel. And then the fourth part of it was really thinking about personalizing that experience. We have to personalize it. We can't give, just open it up and give everybody everything. I always call that the yard sale approach, where you dump everything you have. It has to be personalized to that persona. And that's really been our four sort of guiding principles as we move forward and thinking about the journey map and aligning it. And I know this is a long-winded answer, but since you mentioned it, but I will tell you, one of the biggest benefits we have received from doing the mapping is, especially within the enterprise, within our company, and this is something I think everybody can learn. The journey map, even the high-level framework, has been a way to sort of align all of the different BUs and all of the different organizations around a common CX vision and objective. And before we started this, every BU or every business group within the company sort of had their own vision about what CX meant and where to get to and where we were going. So marketing had their focus, the digital team had their focus, the product BUs, sales ops, sales, everybody had their own sort of vision of what they wanted to do. The journey map allowed us to bring that together and unify that view and give everybody a common taxonomy, a common way of thinking about it. And it really allowed us to bring all these groups together and align them against that common vision and common objective. And that's been a very, very powerful tool, because it allows us now to have these conversations with these BUs and different teams and different organizations, allow them to communicate, and we're talking directly, and we're having the valued discussions internally that are allowing us to make the changes and do the things we need to do. So tremendously valuable from that perspective. And I strongly recommend that any enterprise that is embarking on this type of transformation use the journey map of the journey models as a way to unify cross BU, cross entity within the enterprise and get a common taxonomy, common framework, and get everybody aligned to the end state.
That's a great answer. And that's why I love chatting with you, Erik, because, this is our world, right? In the CX, in the journey space. Also for, folks that might be watching that are not as familiar with customer journey mapping, what I want to highlight for them is what you're talking about is a level of sophistication where not only are you mapping out the journey of the customer, but you're overlaying it with personas like you were talking about. And that is absolutely the way to go, because then you get these different layers of the customer journey, but also viewed from the lens of different personas at play. And that's very different from, Erik, you might have seen this, and I'm trying to say it in the kindest way possible, but we've seen, journey maps, as I'm sure you have as well, where they look like nice infographics, and they're labeled customer journey maps. And and then we have a conversation with the client on what kind of personas did you overlay, or how many customers did you talk to? And the answers typically are none. I called Sally from ops, and we had Joe from marketing, and we sat down and we mapped out the journey. And then we have to be empathetic as well, but then most of the times our response is then it's not a customer journey map, it's a process map. Yeah. It has its benefits, but it's not customer journey mapping.
Yeah, we were very, very guilty of that. And so the method I've been using to address that is what I call above the line and below the line. And basically we take a horizontal sheet of paper and we put a line across it. And we say everything above is really what the customer sees and what the customer experiences. And everything below is what we are doing to provide that experience. Right. So when we started, our customer journey map, much like you said, was, we work with the customer, we create a bill of materials, we release it to supply chain, we do this, we do that. And we said, well, that's the customer journey. And I had to keep pushing back and saying, no, that's all below the line. What the customer sees is a wait time. They see them filling out a form, and then they see 4 weeks go by before something shows up at their door. They don't see us releasing to supply chain or verifying bill of material accuracy or ordering spare parts or whatever those internal steps might be. And we were very guilty of that. So it's taken us a while to really start to shift and put it in the customer's perspective and really take it from the eye of the customer back in, say, what does the customer really see? And if they're not seeing any action because it's all internal, then it's a wait, it's a dwell. And going back to my point about speed and speed to value, that's a delay to our speed to value. So we had to think about it first from customer terms. It's a delay, it's slowing things down, it's hurting our velocity. So we have to go work on those process steps, but the customer doesn't see that. They just see a 4-week delay. What they want to see is a 1-week delay. They want to see that time shortened because they need faster time to value. So it kind of changed the way we still are doing a lot of the same things, but it's changed our prioritization. Because when we think about speed, we think about low effort. Now we're prioritizing those initiatives that go to speed and low effort versus things that might be more efficient for us internally. So rather than trying to, hey, this will save us labor cost, or this will save us time, or this will improve our supply chain, if it doesn't impact that wait time for the customer, it becomes a lower priority item. So our priorities as part of our transformation from a CX perspective now become those that are really focused on, from a customer perspective, is it easier, is it faster, and is it driving that differentiated value?
That leads me to my next question, because I can see that under your leadership, there's a lot of work that's already been done, and you've gotten the mapping to a point where it's actionable and it's relevant. Can you talk a little bit about, for folks that might be listening in, where they might be either at that level, or they might have done some work, but they don't know what comes next. Now, to just give you sort of an introduction on how we go about it, we recommend, not just looking at this as an episodical event where you've done one mapping exercise and then it's done. We like to think about it more as customer journey management. Where it's a process, there's a framework that you're constantly tracking on with KPIs, and constantly, it's a living, breathing document or organism. How do you feel about that? Is that similar in how you approach it, or is it different?
No, that's spot on. And interestingly, and I think, for others who are in this challenge, again, as a transaction-based company and a process-driven company like mine, we have a tendency to think of things in discrete projects. Like, oh, we're going to work on the CX thing and then we're going to be done. What's the milestone for completion? When is it over? When are we going to spend our budget? And I think that's pretty typical. At least it's been typical in other enterprises I've been in, where we tend to think of it that way, that it has to end, right? It has to end in 4 quarters because that's when the budget expires. But you're absolutely right. There is no done with customer experience, because standing still in the market we're in today is really falling behind. You cannot stop, because what we are seeing is there's such a bleed from business to consumer into business to business expectation. So customers are saying, look, I can track my pizza from Domino's and I can see the status real time, or I can see it in Amazon when I order something real time. Why can't I see my server being shipped real time or see the status in the factory real time? Or they're saying, look, I can get a credit check with my new Apple credit card with 3 clicks from my phone. Why do I have to fill out 40 different forms to do a credit check with you? So there is that bleed. So everybody, and whether that's in the technology industry, whether that's Navy Federal Credit Union, USAA, the leaders in experience, they are setting the new bar, they are setting the new standards, and they are continuing to evolve and move forward, which is pulling everybody along. So there is no done in this model. There is just go. The minute you stop, then you fall behind. And the data is very, very compelling when you look at the performance of CX leaders versus laggards over the last 10 to 15 years. There is a very compelling case to make that you cannot be a laggard from an experience perspective. If you think it's going to end and you stop, then you're going to fall behind and you will be a laggard. So no, you're spot on. This never ends, and you've got to think about it on an ongoing basis. Set the goals. You can plan on an annual basis. You can use a 3-year horizon, set some ambitious metrics and KPIs and targets, knowing that when you get there, you're going to have a new set you're going to go after, and that's never going to end. And I think that's a really important point you bring up, Nitin, because I think culturally, especially in enterprises, that might be something that a lot of enterprises are going to struggle with initially is, how do we think about this as an ongoing effort that doesn't end? Like a marketing campaign or a set of campaigns or a function like that just keeps going and refreshing and renewing. Customer experience is that way. This is something, it's like quality management, right? It started out as a department 20 years ago that was off in the corner and did its own thing. Now it got embedded into the organization. And I think we have to think about experience the same way. It's got to be part of everything we do going forward, and there is no end.
You're absolutely right, Eric, and thank you for your comments over there. Because I think the phrase that's going to stick with me even after this session is, when we talk about customer experience management or customer journey mapping, I mean, the customer experience never stops, right? As long as you're in business and you have customers, they're having an experience, right? But having said that, something that we've seen that has been helpful for clients in getting into that mindset of continuously managing it and focusing on it is tying in, developing KPIs and tying those in with revenues, either potential opportunities for the upside or revenue leakage opportunities that should be plugged in. And as we as CX and research experts, we get excited about the methodology and the persona work, but at the C-suite level, it's a little more about, dollars and cents, right? And so if the results can be tied in to, or the KPIs can be tied in to the amount of revenues that the upside or the potential that can be there, or plugging in any leakages that can come about, then we've often seen that makes a better case for looking at it as an ongoing process, as opposed to, not having those metrics in.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that's something we've had to really focus on. What we are seeing is the new competitive front strategically is about experience. Especially in my business, we can't compete as much on price as we used to because everything's digital and it's available to everybody.
Right.
So price is out there, everybody knows it. And even product, where we used to compete a lot on speeds and feeds and product features, everybody can duplicate it. You have the public cloud providing equivalent product. So we can't compete as much on product as we used to. So now the new competitive front is experience. But you're right, from a C-suite perspective, my CFO wants to know, okay, well, if we're competing, what does that mean for our business? How are we going to grow our subscription services? And what does that mean? So we've had to really work hard taking things like NPS or effort scores, task completion rate scores, and translate that to what does that mean from a churn perspective? Right. What does that mean from a share of wallet perspective? What can we expect from a cost of sale perspective? If we have a high net promoter score, a lot of our sales job is being done by our customers, essentially. Would we expect to see a translation into a lower cost of sale? The answer is yes. Or reduce marketing, because now we have word of mouth marketing, which is far more valuable. So we've had to start to make those and show and demonstrate those and start to quantify that hey, there is value. Now the nice thing is there's a lot of data that supports this. Every analyst firm is providing this data. There's a lot of different studies out there. One of the things we like to use a lot is just our NPS score. We're part of a group that does it for the technology industry. So we do an annual NPS score with about 65 different vendors, technology vendors. And it's pretty interesting when we see where we are and where our competitors are. We know who our competitors are that are doing better than we are. And typically we're seeing them with a significantly higher NPS score. Now you could argue, is that really driving it or not? But there's so much data to suggest from all the analyst firms and consulting firms that yes, that is a big driver in that performance. So when the C-suite sees those types of data points, it definitely opens their eyes. And when you get down to the level of the investments and how much we want to invest and what's the return on that investment, that's when we have to get into the metrics like reduced churn, lower cost of sale, higher share of wallet, lower negative word of mouth, right? All of those types of metrics really come into play as we begin to build that business case.
That's great, Erik. So thank you for all your comments. I think this has been very valuable. One final question that I want to ask you is, as you think about, the work that's already been done, and as you think about, your next journey mapping project, or if you could go back in time and you were doing the journey work all over again, what would you do different, reflecting on the experiences you've had?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, more data, more bringing in more customer insights, more customer data, and really understanding the customer in a deeper level. We thought we did, but we understood the customer from our old lens, from the transaction lens. So we didn't have enough that rich data, really understanding the new customer. So that was one of the things. I think we would move faster, sort of standardize things like persona models, journey maps. I have 60 different persona models that are floating around. There's probably more. It's just everybody had done their own, right, within their own BU. Right. I would have worked harder to standardize and get common taxonomy models, like I talked about at the beginning, much faster. Probably brought in some better third-party expertise to help as well, to sort of jumpstart it. I think it's valuable that we learn, and we learn within our own context of our organization. But I think a little more guidance from those who've been there and done that many times, I think would have been more valuable as well. So looking back, I would say those were probably the three big things: is get more data and be really, really crisp on the data we need and go after that data. We got it, but we got it later than I think we should have. And it would have been great to have that up front. Again, really get crisp on the model, the framework, the taxonomy, get that nailed down very early on so that everything flows from that versus having to try to bring it all together later. And then, enlist some third-party help with people who have been there and done that, so we don't make mistakes that have been made elsewhere. It's funny, when I was doing a lot of professional service consulting work, I always told my clients, I don't want you to make the mistake any other of my clients have already made. There's no need for that. I will share all of that information. I want you to make new mistakes. And I think we could have learned from that lesson, and I think that would have helped us as well. And that accelerated the journey. But I think it's important to remember it is a journey. It's nothing you can flip a switch. And it's amazing how it just keeps going and going. We keep learning, we keep making changes and course correcting and improving. And the industry's changing at the same time. So you have these external pressures that are driving you as well. So you have to keep listening to customers, get the feedback loops going, really understand the journey they're on, map that to your products, map that to the personas, and just keep moving it forward. And like I said before, standing still is falling behind. You can't stop. This is something that has to be ongoing. You have to think about, how do you keep this thing going forward?
You're spot on, Erik. And, from a research background, something that I've always shared with clients is, don't expect one research effort to clear your confusion and answer all your questions, but expect one research effort to elevate your confusion to the next level. Right?
And now force you to ask 2 questions.
That's absolutely right. So, wonderful. This has been a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for your time again. And I think folks listening in will definitely get some good insights and nuggets that they can use and reflect on as well. So
Great. Always great to talk to you, Nitin. Thank you.